The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls were carved from the bones of dead stars, polished until they shone like mirrors. Representatives from 417 species filled the curved seats that rose toward a ceiling, painted with the light of 100 captured nebulae. For millennia, this hall had witnessed treaties, declarations of war, and the birth of empires. But nothing had prepared it for what would happen on this ordinary rotation. Ambassador Threll of the Vortani stood at the central podium. His four eyes scanned the crowd with the confidence of a species that had dominated galactic politics for 3,000 years. The Vortani were tall, thin creatures with skin like polished copper. They considered themselves the natural leaders of the council, and for the most part, no one challenged this belief. "We gather today," Threll announced, his voice carrying through the translation matrix that allowed every species to understand, to discuss the admission of a new species into the Galactic Council. The humans of Earth have requested membership. A ripple of whispers moved through the assembly. Most species here had never encountered humans. Earth was a small planet on the outer edge of the galaxy, far from the trade routes and political centers. The humans had only achieved faster than light travel 70 years ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. Chancellor Kreth of the Moldari leaned forward in her seat. The Moldari were ancient beings, their bodies made of crystalline formations that hummed with stored energy. They had been founding members of the council and held great influence. "What do we know of these humans?" she asked. Threll activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, showing blue oceans and green continents. Then came pictures of humans themselves, standing in their cities, working in their factories, living their brief lives. "They are carbon-based bipeds," Threll explained. "Average lifespan of approximately 80 years. They have colonized 3 planets in their home system and established 12 outposts in nearby star systems. Their technology is primitive by our standards. Their military capabilities are minimal. Why should we admit such a weak species?" asked Representative Gorath of the Zorani. The Zorani were massive creatures with armored plates covering their bodies. They valued strength above all else and considered warfare an art form. Tradition demands that any species achieving interstellar travel be given the opportunity to address the council. Threll replied, "We shall hear their representative and then vote on their admission." The doors at the far end of the hall opened. A single human walked in. She was a woman of average height with dark hair tied back in a simple style. She wore a plain gray uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank. Her name was Sarah Chun, and she had been chosen specifically because she was ordinary. The human government had decided that their first impression should be honest rather than impressive. Sarah walked to the podium with steady steps. She looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Some were curious. Others were bored. A few showed open contempt. She took a breath and began to speak. "Thank you for allowing me to address this council," she said. "I will keep my statement brief." Threll nodded with approval. Short speeches were preferred. New species often made the mistake of talking too long, trying to impress the council with grand words and empty promises. Humanity asked for membership in the Galactic Council. Sarah continued, "We offer our friendship, our trade, and our cooperation. We do not seek to dominate or conquer. We simply wish to join the community of species that have reached the stars." She paused. The council waited for more. Surely there would be more. New species always made promises. They offered technology, resources, military support. They begged for protection or demanded recognition. But Sarah simply stood there. "That is all?" Threll asked, confused. "Almost," Sarah replied. "I have only one question for the council before I conclude." Threll waved a hand in permission. Sarah looked around the hall once more. Then she asked her question in a calm, clear voice. "How many of your species were created by another?" Silence fell like a hammer. The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Sarah watched as the effect spread through the assembly. The Vortani ambassador's copper skin paled. Chancellor Kreth's crystal body flickered with unstable light. Representative Gorath's armored plates tightened in what could only be described as fear. "I do not understand the question," Thrall said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I think you do," Sarah replied. "Humanity evolved naturally on our planet. We were not designed. We were not engineered. We were not seeded by a predecessor race. We grew from the mud of Earth through billions of years of natural selection. We fought our way to intelligence without help. The whispers that erupted were not polite murmurs. They were sharp, panicked exchanges. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries suddenly huddled together, their differences forgotten in the face of this simple statement." Sarah continued, "We have learned, in our short time among the stars, that this is unusual. Most species in this galaxy were created, some by ancient races that have long since vanished, others by each other. You have masters, whether you acknowledge them or not. You have creators whose purposes you serve, even if those purposes are forgotten. This is outrageous," Gorath bellowed, rising from his seat. "The Zerani are a proud warrior race. We were not created by anyone. Your genetic code contains artificial markers consistent with deliberate engineering," Sarah said calmly. "Your species was designed for war approximately 40,000 years ago, likely by the same race that created the Moldari for administration and the Vortani for diplomacy." The hall exploded into chaos. Species turned on each other, accusations flying. Ancient alliances crumbled in seconds as the implications of Sarah's words sank in. If what she said was true, then everything the Council believed about itself was a lie. They were not independent civilizations that had risen to greatness through their own efforts. They were products created for purposes they did not choose. Chancellor Kreth slammed her crystalline hand against her podium, creating a tone that cut through the noise. "Where did you obtain this information?" she demanded. "We found ruins," Sarah answered, "on a dead world in an unexplored sector. The species that lived there left records, complete records. They created hundreds of species over millions of years. They built servants for every purpose. Warriors, builders, thinkers, explorers. They shaped life itself to serve their needs. And what happened to these creators?" Thrall asked, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah shrugged. "They died, or left, or evolved into something else. The records are incomplete. But they made one note about our region of space. They observed Earth but chose not to interfere. They described us as, and I quote, uncontrolled variables with unpredictable development patterns. We were too chaotic for them, too random, too dangerous." The Council sat in stunned silence. "Humanity is not better than you," Sarah continued. "We are not stronger or more worthy. We simply had no purpose designed into us. We chose our own path. Every step of our evolution, every leap of our progress came from our own struggle. We have no hidden masters. We have no forgotten purpose. We are free in a way that you are not." Representative Gorath spoke again, but his voice had changed. The aggressive certainty was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like pleading. "You could be lying. This could all be a trick to divide us." "I could be," Sarah agreed, "but you know I am not. You have felt it, all of you. The strange sense of duty that you cannot explain. The instincts that guide your species towards specific behaviors. The patterns in your societies that repeat across thousands of years. Those are the fingerprints of your creators, still shaping you from beyond death." Thrall's four eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that would have frightened most humans. "Why tell us this? Why destroy the unity of the Council with a single question?" Sarah smiled for the first time. "Because unity built on lies is not unity. It is slavery to an unknown master. Humanity offers you something new. Not an alliance based on fear or obligation. Not a partnership designed by ancient engineers. We offer you the chance to choose. Truly choose for the first time in your history. Will you be what you were made to be? Or will you become what you wish to be? The chamber fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was not shock or fear. It was thought. Deep, uncomfortable, revolutionary thought. Chancellor Kreth rose from her seat. Her crystal body pulsed with light as she processed centuries of assumption and belief. The admission vote is postponed, she announced. This council must first address the claims made by the human representative. We will examine the records from the dead world. We will test the genetic evidence. We will know the truth. And if the truth confirms what she has said, Gorath asked. Kreth turned to look at the massive warrior. Then we will have much to discuss about who we are, about who we wish to become, about whether the purposes we were given are purposes we accept. Sarah stepped back from the podium. Her work was done. She had delivered humanity's minimal statement, and it had shattered the foundations of galactic civilization. Not with weapons or threats, but with a single question that no one had dared to ask. As she walked back toward the doors, she passed hundreds of aliens who now looked at her with new eyes. She was not a representative of a weak, primitive species. She was something far more unsettling. She was a reminder that freedom existed, that creatures could grow without design, that purpose could be chosen rather than inherited. The Galactic Council would never be the same. Ancient alliances would dissolve. New ones would form. Species that had followed their programming for millennia would begin to question, to rebel, to change. And humanity, the uncontrolled variable, would watch from the edges of civilization as the galaxy tore itself apart and rebuilt itself into something new. It would take centuries, perhaps longer. But Sarah knew that her species had done something remarkable. They had offered the galaxy a gift not know it needed, the gift of doubt, the gift of choice, the gift of true freedom. And as she boarded her ship to return to Earth, she permitted herself one final thought. The ancient creators had been right to leave humanity alone. They had been right to fear what an uncontrolled variable might do. Because humans did not play by the rules of the designed species. They made their own rules. And today, with nothing more than a simple question, one human had changed everything. The stars outside her window sparkled with new possibility. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity had set the alarm.